The stars had always seemed beautiful too. When he was a boy growing up he would sit on the roof of his family's small house and watch them shine. He dreamed of exploring them one day. Now, standing on the bridge of the UDF carrier Resolve, he wished he had never left Earth. The tactical display in front of him showed nothing but death. Red dots blinked out one by one. Each dot was a ship. Each ship held hundreds of soldiers, and they were all dying. "Sir, the 7th Fleet is gone," Lieutenant said. Her voice was steady but could see her hands shaking. "The 9th is reporting total contamination. They're asking for permission to end it quickly." Closed his eyes. End it quickly. That meant the crews wanted to blow up their own ships rather than die slowly from what was eating them alive. "Permission granted," he said. The words felt like poison in his mouth. On the main screen, 3 ships in the distance exploded in bright white light. Forced himself to watch. Those were his people. They deserved to be seen in their final moments. The Empire had come to humanity's solar system 3 weeks ago. Their fleet was large, but not impossibly so. Humanity had fought aliens before. Small conflicts, border disputes, nothing serious. The United Defense Fleet was confident they could handle whatever came. They were wrong. They did not fight like other species. They did not use missiles or energy weapons or any technology humanity understood. Instead, they used something alive, something hungry. The soldiers called it the rot. Had seen the first reports from Mars colony. He had watched the videos that the dying soldiers sent back. The rot was a fungus or something like a fungus. It glowed purple, soft and almost beautiful in the darkness. It spread across surfaces like water flowing uphill, and when it touched living things, it ate them. Not quickly, not kindly, the rot took its time. Soldiers screamed as the purple growth crawled up their legs. They watched their own flesh dissolve, watched their bones turn black and crumble. The rot kept them alive as long as possible. It wanted them to feel everything. "Another wave incoming," reported. "They're launching more pods." The ships did not fire weapons. They fired pods filled with the rot. The pods would hit a human ship, crack open, and release the purple death inside. Life support systems would spread it through every corridor. Within an hour, the ship would be silent. "How many ships do we have left?" asked. Checked her display. 47 combat capable, maybe 30 more that can still move. They had started with 300. "Pull everyone back," ordered. "Full retreat to Earth." "Sir, if we retreat now, we lose the outer colonies. Mars, Europa, Titan, 3 million people. If we stay here, we lose everything." Turned to face his crew. They were young, so young. Most of them had joined the military for the education benefits or to see the galaxy. None of them had signed up for this. "The colonies are already lost. The rot is already there. We need to save what we can." The retreat was chaos. Ships fled in every direction trying to escape the fleet. The aliens did not chase them. They did not need to. They simply followed at a steady pace, like hunters who knew their prey could not escape. Watched the reports come in as they traveled back to Earth. Mars colony had gone silent. Europa Station sent one final message. "It's beautiful, the purple light, it's so beautiful. We can't stop looking at it. We can't." Then nothing. The rot did something to people's minds before it killed their bodies. It made them want to watch, made them want to stay close. Some soldiers had been found walking toward the purple growth with smiles on their faces, even as it ate their friends beside them. "How long until they reach Earth?" asked. "At their current speed, 29 days, replied. Less than a month. Humanity had less than a month to find a way to stop something that had never been stopped before. Pulled up everything the intelligence teams had gathered about They were creatures, tall and thin, with hard shells covering their bodies. They had conquered 17 star systems in the past 10 years. Every species they encountered, they destroyed, not with armies or bombs, but with the rot. No one had ever found a counter to it. Hundreds of alien scientists from dozens of conquered worlds had tried. Fire made it grow faster. Cold only made it sleep. Radiation made it stronger. Chemicals became food for it. The rot was perfect. A perfect weapon created by millions of years of evolution. The had found it on some dead moon and turned it into the most terrible tool of war the galaxy had ever seen. One of the junior officers approached. The young man's name was Minu, and he was barely 20 years old. "Sir, my family is in Seoul. Do you think we can stop them?" Wanted to lie. He wanted to say yes, of course, humanity always found a way. But he had just watched 200,000 soldiers die screaming. He had just ordered the abandonment of 3 million civilians. "I don't know," he said honestly, "but we will try. That's all we can do." The Resolve pushed its engines to maximum speed. Around it, the surviving ships of humanity's once-proud fleet limped toward home. Behind them, the Armada followed like a shadow. In his quarters that night, could not sleep. He kept seeing the videos from Mars, kept hearing the screams, kept watching soldiers dissolve into purple light. His communicator buzzed. A message from Earth. The Global Emergency Council had formed. Every nation, every government, every resource on the planet was being united under one command. Scientists were already studying samples of the rot that had been recovered from infected ships. The message ended with a single question: "What do we need?" Typed his response with heavy fingers: "A miracle." He sent the message and stared out his window at the stars. Somewhere out there they were coming. They were patient. They were confident. They had never lost. But they had also never fought humans before. Did not know if that would matter. He did not know if anything could stop the rot. But as he watched Earth grow larger in the distance, a small blue marble in the endless black, he made a promise to himself. He would not let that purple light touch his home. He would find a way, or he would die trying. The stars did not seem beautiful anymore. Doctor had not slept in 4 days. Her eyes burned. Her hands shook when she held her coffee cup, but she could not stop working. Every hour she rested was an hour closer to the end of everything. The Seoul Research Institute had become the center of humanity's last hope. Scientists from every country worked side by side in laboratories that never closed. They studied samples of the rot behind thick glass walls, watching the purple fungus consume everything they fed it. "Try the acid again," ordered. "Higher concentration this time." Her assistant, a young man named, prepared the solution. They had tried acids before. They had tried everything before, but they had to keep trying. There was nothing else to do. The acid hit the rot sample. For a moment the purple glow dimmed, leaned forward, hope rising in her chest. Then the rot absorbed the acid like water. Its glow became brighter, stronger. "It's adapting," whispered. "It's learning." Slammed her hand on the table. "Everything we throw at it makes it stronger. Fire makes it spread. Cold makes it sleep but doesn't kill it. Radiation speeds up its growth. How is this possible?" She walked to the main display and pulled up the data they had gathered. The rot was not just a fungus. It was something far more complex. It had been evolving for millions of years on a world where nothing else could survive. It had become the perfect predator, the perfect consumer. "It's not engineered," said during the evening briefing with the council. "They found it somewhere, some dead planet where it had already eaten everything else. They just pointed it at their enemies and let it do what it does naturally." General Park, the head of the council, frowned at the screen. "So how do we kill it?" "I don't know if we can," hated saying those words. "It has survived everything its home world could throw at it. Extreme heat, extreme cold, radiation, vacuum. It's been perfecting itself for longer than humanity has existed." The room fell silent. On the screens, news reports showed people around the world preparing for the end. Some prayed, some rioted, some simply held their families and waited. "Keep working," General Park said finally. We will find something. Meanwhile, far from the laboratories, Sargent had a different mission. His squad had been pulled from the front lines and sent to a secret facility in the mountains. Their job was to guard prisoners. The aliens had been captured during the first battle. Most of them had killed themselves rather than be taken alive, but a few had survived. Now they sat in cells, their insect-like faces showing no emotion as human interrogators asked questions. Did not like being a guard. He was a soldier. He wanted to fight, but his commanders said this was important. Understanding the enemy could help find a weakness. He watched through a one-way mirror as the chief interrogator talked to the highest-ranking prisoner. There was tall, nearly 7 feet, with a hard shell that reflected the light. Its eyes were compound like a fly's, and they never blinked. "Tell us about the rot," the interrogator demanded. "How do we stop it?" The translator device on the table processed the alien's response. Its voice came through flat and emotionless. "You cannot stop it. Nothing can stop it. The rot has consumed worlds older than your species. It will consume you as it has consumed all others. Everything has a weakness. Not the rot. It is perfect. It is eternal. It will exist long after your bones have become dust." Turned away from the mirror. The alien's confidence was absolute. It truly believed that nothing could save humanity. Maybe it was right. But something nagged at him, something he had noticed during the prisoner transfer. They had refused to eat the food offered to them, not just politely refused. They had seemed almost afraid of it. He mentioned this to his commander, Captain. She looked at him like he was crazy. "They're aliens," she said. "Of course they don't want to eat our food, it's probably toxic to them." But they were scared of it. One of them backed away when I opened my lunch container. It was just rice and kimchi, but the alien looked at it like I was holding a weapon. Shook her head. "Focus on your job, Sergeant. The scientists will find a solution. That's not our responsibility." Nodded and returned to his post, but he could not stop thinking about the alien's reaction. The way its compound eyes had widened, the way it had pressed itself against the far wall of its transport cell. Back in Seoul continued her work through the night. They had tried everything logical. Now they were trying everything illogical. They exposed the rot to music, to art, to human voices singing songs. Nothing worked. She was about to give up for the night when came running into the lab. "Doctor, you need to see this." He pulled up a video on the main screen. It was from one of the quarantine zones, a place where the rot had taken hold before being contained. The video showed the purple growth spreading across a room, consuming tables and chairs and walls. Then someone walked into the frame. An old woman, a janitor who had been trapped when the zone was sealed. She was eating something from a small container. The rot stopped moving. "What is she eating?" demanded. Zoomed in on the image. "It looks like pickled vegetables, the old kind fermented in clay pots." On the screen, the old woman continued eating, unaware of the camera. The rot stayed frozen. Its purple glow seemed dimmer near her. Some of its tendrils were actually pulling back, retreating from her direction. "Get me that woman," said. "Get me whatever she's eating. Get me everything." For the first time in days, she felt something other than despair. She felt hope. Private was not a hero. She knew this about herself. She was 19 years old. She had joined the military because she could not afford university, and she had spent most of her 4 months of service doing paperwork in a small office. When the war began, she had been reassigned to guard duty at the quarantine facility outside. It was supposed to be a safe job. The rot samples were kept behind thick walls and heavy doors. Nothing could go wrong. At 300 hours on a cold Tuesday night, everything went wrong. Was sitting in the guard station, eating the kimchi her grandmother had sent her in a care package. It was good kimchi, made the old way, fermented in a clay pot buried in the ground for months. Her grandmother said the modern stuff from factories was garbage. Real kimchi took time and love. The alarm started screaming. Red lights flashed across the walls. A voice on the speaker announced, "Containment breach in Laboratory 7. All personnel evacuate immediately." Jumped to her feet, reaching for her weapon. Two other soldiers were in the station with her, corporal and private. They looked as scared as she felt. "What do we do?" asked. "We run," said. "That's what we do. We get out of here before." The door burst open. Purple light flooded into the room. The rot was coming. Had seen videos of the rot, everyone had, but seeing it in person was different. It was beautiful. That was the terrible part. The purple glow was soft and warm like candlelight. It made you want to look at it, made you want to touch it. She shook her head, breaking the spell. The other exit move. They ran to the back of the station. The door was sealed. Emergency lockdown, they were trapped. The rot crept closer. It moved slowly, almost gently, spreading across the floor like spilled water. Tendrils reached out toward them and could see tiny mouths opening and closing along their surfaces. Hungry mouths. Raised his rifle and fired. The bullets passed through the rot without effect. It did not even slow down. "It's over," whispered. She fell to her knees. "It's over." His hands were shaking. In her terror, she realized she was still holding her container of kimchi. The smell of garlic and fermented vegetables filled the air. The rot stopped. Froze. The purple growth was only 2 meters away from them now. Its tendrils had been reaching for legs, but now they were pulling back, retreating. "What's happening?" asked. Looked at the kimchi in her hands. She looked at the rot. It was moving away from her, away from the smell. "No way," she breathed. "There's no way." She took a step forward. The rot pulled back. She took another step. It retreated further. Something crazy entered her mind. Something stupid. Something that made no sense at all. But they were going to die anyway. What did she have to lose? She grabbed a piece of kimchi and threw it at the rot. The effect was immediate and terrible. Where the fermented cabbage touched the purple growth, the fungus turned black. It shriveled, it died, and it screamed. Not out loud, did not hear anything with her ears, but she felt it in her mind. A psychic shriek of absolute agony, like a million voices crying out in pain. "Holy shit," said. Threw more kimchi. More of the rot died. She ran to where the tendrils were thickest and dumped the entire container on them. The purple glow went out. The fungus crumbled into black dust. "It works," she said, not quite believing her own words. "It actually works." Within an hour, the facility was swarming with scientists. Doctor arrived by helicopter from Seoul, running into the building before the rotors had even stopped spinning. She found in the guard station, sitting on the floor, still holding her empty kimchi container. The young soldier looked dazed. "You," said, "you're the one who discovered it." Nodded slowly. "My grandmother makes really good kimchi." Almost laughed. "Almost. Show me exactly what you did. Don't leave anything out." For the next several hours they ran tests. They tried every fermented food they could find. Kimchi worked. So did sauerkraut from Germany. Yogurt made the rot recoil. Cheese caused it to wither. Miso soup made it scream. "It's the bacteria," announced to the council via video call. Her face was shining with excitement and relief. Lactobacillus and other fermentation bacteria. The rot evolved on a world that never developed this kind of organic decay. These microorganisms are completely foreign to it, toxic. It has no defense against them. General Park stared at her through the screen. "You're telling me that we can defeat the most dangerous biological weapon in the galaxy with food?" "With fermented food, yes. The older the fermentation process, the more effective it is. Traditional methods work better than industrial ones. The bacteria need time to multiply and produce the right compounds." "How do we turn this into a weapon?" Smiled for the first time in weeks. "Give me a few days, we'll figure it out." was brought to Seoul as a consultant. She did not understand why. She was not a scientist. She did not know anything about bacteria or fermentation, but people wanted to shake her hand. They wanted to take pictures with her. News reporters called her the savior of humanity. "I just threw kimchi at it," she told everyone. "My grandmother did all the work." But she called her grandmother that night. The old woman answered on the second ring, as if she had been waiting. "I need to tell you something important." "What is it, child?" "Your kimchi might save the world." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then her grandmother said, "Of course it will. I use my mother's recipe. Good fermentation takes generations. Your great-grandmother would be proud." Smiled and cried at the same time. "Can you make more? A lot more." "How much do you need?" Thought about the fleet coming toward Earth. She thought about the millions of soldiers who would need to fight. She thought about the entire world. "All of it," she said. "We need all of it." The world had 2 weeks to prepare. 2 weeks to turn thousands of years of cooking tradition into weapons of war. It should have been impossible. But humans had a talent for doing impossible things when they were scared enough. Every fermentation facility on Earth was converted to military production. Factories that had made beer now made concentrated bacterial solutions. Cheese producers worked day and night to create the most potent cultures possible. In Korea, Japan, Germany, and dozens of other countries, grandmothers were brought out of retirement to teach young scientists the old ways. Commander watched the preparations from the bridge of the Resolve, which floated in high orbit above Earth. His ship had been repaired and refitted. Where missile launchers once sat, there were now tanks filled with fermented compounds. Where bombs had been stored, there were containers of weaponized kimchi. "This is insane," Lieutenant said, looking at the new equipment. "We're going to fight with food." "We're going to fight with biology," corrected. "They used biology against us. We're returning the favor." The new weapons had been given official names by the military. Fermentation bombs, bacterial dispersal units, lactobacillus deployment systems, but the soldiers had their own names for them. Cheese cannons, yogurt grenades, kimchi bombs. "The troops are calling the main warheads grandmother bombs," reported with a small smile, "because they're made with grandmother's recipes." Allowed himself a brief laugh. It felt strange after so many weeks of despair. Let them call them whatever they want, as long as they work. The ground forces were preparing too. Sergeant led his squad through training exercises in the mountains outside Seoul. They no longer carried standard weapons. Instead, they wore tanks on their backs filled with fermented liquid, connected to spray nozzles that looked like flamethrowers. "Remember," told his soldiers, "the bacteria need to make contact with the rot. Spray wide, cover as much area as possible, and whatever you do, don't let the purple light touch you." Private, now promoted to corporal after her discovery, was attached to his unit. She did not really understand why she was there. She was not trained for combat, but the commanders said she was important, a symbol, a good luck charm. "Just stay close to me," told her. "If anything happens, I'll protect you." Nodded, but she was not worried about herself. She was thinking about her grandmother, who was somewhere in Seoul, teaching military scientists how to make proper kimchi. The old woman had complained that young people did not know how to ferment anything correctly. "Too impatient," had said. "Fermentation takes time, you cannot rush it. The bacteria need weeks, months to do their work properly." But they did not have months. They had days. So the scientists did their best, using every shortcut they could find. The results were not as powerful as traditional fermented foods, but they were good enough. In tests, they could kill the rot in seconds instead of minutes. Meanwhile, intelligence teams were learning more about the interrogators had finally broken one of the prisoners. The alien revealed that the rot was not just a weapon. It was sacred to them. They called it the Great Consumer and believed it was a gift from their gods. Your people will feed the consumer, the prisoner told them. Your world will become another garden for it to grow. This is the natural order. This is the way of things. When they showed the prisoner what happened when fermented food touched the rot, it screamed. Actually screamed, a terrible high-pitched sound that hurt human ears. Then it went silent and refused to speak again. The fleet entered the solar system on a Tuesday morning. 300 ships, arranged in perfect formation, approaching Earth at a steady pace. They had already destroyed the outer colonies. Mars was covered in purple light visible from orbit. Europa had been consumed completely. Stood on the bridge of the Resolve and watched them come. Beside him, the crew worked at their stations. The fear was still there in the back of everyone's mind, but there was something else now too. Hope, determination. All ships report ready, announced. The fleet is in position. The rebuilt human fleet was smaller than before, only 100 combat ships, but each one was loaded with the new weapons. Each crew knew what they were fighting for. Open a channel to all ships, ordered. His face appeared on screens across the fleet. Soldiers stopped what they were doing and listened. This is Commander. 3 weeks ago we ran from these aliens. We watched our friends die. We lost hope. But today is different. Today we have something they never expected. Today we fight back. He paused, looking at the faces on his own bridge. Young faces, scared faces, brave faces. They think they are unstoppable. They think their weapon is perfect. They're wrong. We found their weakness. And now we're going to show them what happens when you try to eat a species that has been eating fermented food for 10,000 years. A cheer rose up from the crew. Similar cheers echoed across the fleet. All ships, said, his voice hard and cold, prepare for battle. Let's show them what humanity is made of. On the ground, squad loaded into their transport. They would be deployed to the surface if the rot made landfall. Everyone hoped it would not come to that. Sat in her seat, checking her spray equipment for the 10th time. She thought about her grandmother. She thought about all the grandmothers across the world who had taught their recipes to strangers so that humanity might survive. Whatever happens, she said quietly, at least we're fighting. Heard her and nodded. Whatever happens, we're not running anymore. The fleet came closer. The Battle of Earth was about to begin. They attacked exactly as they had before. Their ships launched thousands of pods toward the human fleet. Each pod carried enough of the rot to consume a starship. They had done this 17 times before, against 17 different species. It had always worked. This time was different. Watch the pods approach on the tactical display. All ships hold positions. Wait for the pods to deploy. Let them think they've won. The pods hit the lead ships of the human fleet. Purple light began to spread across their hulls. On the command ship, officers must have been watching with satisfaction. Another species about to fall. Another world about to be consumed. Now said, fire everything. The human fleet launched its counterattack. Missiles filled with fermented compounds streaked toward the infected ships. They struck the purple growth and detonated. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The rot died screaming. Across 1,000 kilometers of space, the psychic shriek of the dying fungus echoed through every ship. Humans grabbed their heads in pain, collapsed at their stations. The sound was the death cry of something ancient, something that had never known defeat. Where the fermentation bombs hit, the purple light turned black and crumbled away. Ships that had been lost were suddenly clear. Crews that had been preparing to die found themselves alive. All ships advance, ordered. Push through their lines, target the pods before they can deploy. The human fleet surged forward. More missiles launched. More rot died. The formation began to break apart as their commanders realized something impossible was happening. On the ground, the battle was equally fierce. Some pods had made it through the orbital defenses and landed on Earth. The rot began to spread across farmland in Russia, through a city in Brazil, along a coastline in India. But humanity was ready. Sergeant led his squad into a contaminated zone in the Korean countryside. The purple light was everywhere, consuming trees and buildings and the bodies of people who had not evacuated in time. Spray Pattern Alpha ordered, "Cover everything." His soldiers fanned out and unleashed streams of fermented liquid. Where the spray touched the rot, the fungus died. They moved forward meter by meter, clearing a path through the purple nightmare. Corporal stayed close to, her own sprayer working constantly. She had never fired a weapon in combat before, but this was not really a weapon. This was her grandmother's kimchi, mixed with yogurt from Germany and cheese from France and a dozen other fermented foods from around the world. "Keep moving," shouted. "Don't let it regroup." The rot tried to fight back. Tendrils reached for soldiers, trying to touch exposed skin, but the fermentation spray created a barrier. The bacteria in the air made the rot hesitate and retreat. By evening, every contamination site on Earth had been cleared. The purple light was gone. The rot was dead. In orbit, the battle was over too. The human fleet had cut through the forces like a knife through paper. Without the rot, the aliens had no real weapons. Their ships were designed to carry the fungus, not to fight. Stood on the bridge of the flagship. His boarding party had taken the ship in less than an hour. Now he walked through corridors that smelled like death and decay, making his way to the command center. The High Commander waited for him there. The alien was 8 feet tall, its shell cracked and damaged from the fighting. Around it stood a dozen guards, all holding weapons that looked like spears. "You have won nothing," the High Commander said through a translator device. "We will return. We will find a counter to your weapon. The rot will evolve, it will adapt, and then—" Held up a hand. Behind him, Corporal stepped forward. "We didn't come here to negotiate," said calmly. Carried a small container. She opened it, and the smell of fermented soybeans filled the room. Made by her grandmother using a recipe that was 5 generations old. The guard stumbled backward. The High Commander's confidence cracked. Its compound eyes widened with something that looked very much like fear. "What is that?" the alien demanded. "What are you carrying?" Smiled. She reached into the container, picked up a piece of tofu that had been sitting in the fermented paste, and ate it. The watched in horror. This human was consuming something that killed their god, consuming it casually, consuming it with obvious enjoyment. Chewed, swallowed, took another bite. "We eat this every day," said, his voice quiet but hard. "Every human on Earth, every colony, every ship. We have been eating your weapon's poison for 10,000 years. He stepped closer to the High Commander. "And we like it." The alien's translator was silent for a long moment. Then the High Commander spoke 2 words. "We surrender." 3 months later, the Treaty of Seoul was signed in the same city where scientists had first developed the fermentation weapons. The Empire agreed to release all conquered territories. They agreed to destroy their remaining stocks of the rot. They agreed to never threaten another species again. In return, humanity agreed not to share fermentation technology with the other conquered species. They shared it anyway. Within a decade, 17 different alien civilizations had learned to make cheese and yogurt and pickled vegetables. The galaxy entered an era of peace, united by a shared appreciation for food that had been allowed to rot in exactly the right way. Doctor received the highest scientific honor Earth could offer. Commander was promoted to Admiral and put in charge of humanity's expanding fleet. Sergeant retired from the military and opened a restaurant that served traditional Korean fermented dishes. It became the most popular restaurant in the galaxy. Corporal went home. She found her grandmother in the garden, tending to the clay pots buried in the ground. The old woman looked up as approached. "You saved the world with my kimchi," said. "It was not a question." "I did." Her grandmother nodded as if this was completely expected. I use my mother's recipe. She used her mother's recipe. Good fermentation takes generations. She handed a fresh jar of kimchi, still cool from the earth. Now help me make more, the old woman said. The galaxy is going to need it. Laughed and cried at the same time. She knelt beside her grandmother and began to work. Above them, the stars shone bright and clean, no longer the source of nightmares. Somewhere out there, aliens were learning that the most dangerous species in the galaxy was not the one with the biggest guns or the most advanced technology. It was the one that had learned to let its food rot on purpose. And then ate it anyway.